All right, welcome back to the KnivesFAST channel, guys. And as promised, it's Memorial Day, and things are going to be a little bit different around here. I got my patriotic Snoopy shirt on and got my flag. I'm all America all day long, and really proud to be an American. And that comes from being raised, by a Navy dad, by a proud American. And I wanted to look, we're going to talk about a couple of knives briefly, but I wanted to just talk a little bit more about, Memorial Day and just my affinity for those who have served and are serving in the military. Guys, I talked a little bit before I get into the part about my dad, talked a little bit about, when I first early started talking to the guys at Toor Knives, I was so impressed about how many of them served or are still serving in the military. Both the owners who founded the company, Connor and Cam, served in high levels in the American military, served overseas. Lots of stories, I'm sure, lots of things. And I just, it's one of the reasons, they always talk about building the knives under the flag here in America. And I just think that's so incredibly cool. And again, a lot of the guys I talked to over there, Vern and many of the others, former military, and I just super appreciate you guys if you're watching this. My dad, though, was my best friend, died quite a few years ago now, and he's my inspiration for pretty much everything, but he's what got me into knives. We talked about this knife in my fixed blade collection video. This was his Camillus. A lot of people said that this was a World War II issue knife. I believe so, but I don't think this was one that he was issued when he was serving in the Navy. I think it was like his uncle's or somebody like that. But as you can see, we use this knife a lot around the yard and different things. And then, of course, there's my Boy Scout knife, my Ulster Cub Scout Boy Scout knife. So many memories with my dad, fishing, hiking, camping, you name it, this thing did all of them. So many of us have so many purpose-built tools these days where we get in there, we have a specific camp fixed blade that we slice our potatoes. I cannot tell you how many times this cut up, some meat or a potato or something, or, fillet a fish. And nowadays we use fillet knives. When I was younger, you just used whatever you had, and that's that's what I had. So, again, those were given to me by my dad, and they're very, very special. So I just wanted to talk about my dad a little bit today, guys. And let's see if you guys can see this. But this was my dad. Sorry for the glare. This was my dad in World War II. I believe this was taken in Hawaii at Pearl Harbor and sent back to his mother. And I just think, there's all his medals. Always like to show those off. He was in World War II. And in Korea, served on board the USS Ordronox and the USS Harridan. And I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about kind of one of his stories, because every time I tell this story, people really enjoy hearing it. It's kind of a wild story, and it's kind of why, if this story doesn't happen the way that it happened, I'm not here today talking to you. And the funny thing is that right before my dad died, a few years before he died, probably 2 or 3 years before, a guy by the name of David Sears reached out to him. My dad was, through one of my brothers, was active on a website of shipmates from the USS Harridan, and had told part of his story on there. And this historic book writer, and you can see this is definitely a history book, was, reached out to him and asked if he could interview him about a book he was doing about kamikazes of World War II. And this is the book. It's called At War with the Wind. There you go. David Sears. Really big book, but really, there's a lot of... David's style is to let the guys tell the stories. As you guys know, World War II veterans, they're almost gone. There's not a ton of them left. And before too long, we won't have those guys to tell the stories. I documented over the years. I have videotape and different things of my dad telling his stories. When I was a young kid, my dad wouldn't really tell many of his stories. I mean, think about all the friends these guys lose when they're in the military like this. My dad always used to say, when I will never forget when Saving Private Ryan came out. He didn't want to go see it, and he was a little offended by. Now, again, don't take this the wrong way. The guys that fought in D-Day are amazing, and we have the National D-Day Memorial here in Virginia nearby me, and I love going there. And my heart goes out to those families and those servicemen who died turning that war around. So please, my dad never felt that there was anything wrong with D-Day or the people that served. He loved those men and honored them. But he always used to think, what about all the other guys at all the other invasions? My dad was in the Atlantic and the Pacific, and he used to say that everywhere he went, they were part of invasions. They were a whole bunch of ships that would come forward, and he saw, hundreds and thousands of guys go on landing crafts in Sicily and Italy and all these different places, not just obviously the ones that landed in D-Day, and the same kinds of stories play out again and again. So I think his point was, let's honor all of the servicemen, and I get why, again, there's been a Dunkirk movie, there's been all these different movies, Midway, so it's good that we're honoring all of them, but it was just funny. His reaction was, to immediately think of those friends of his, those guys that were with him on these ships that died in these different situations. And of course, it impacts your life forever. So I just thought I'd share a little bit again about this. So basically, and I'm trying to look for the date, but it was December 13th, 1944, I believe. If I don't get the date right, I'll stick it down in the comments. In the description. But basically, the section about my dad and the guys from the Harridan is on pages 228 and 229 of At War with the Wind. And actually, the section is called "Frightening," to put it mildly, and I think that's very apropos to what happened. But basically, they were in the Sulu Sea. Near the island of Mindoro, which is around about the Philippines. And there was a whole convoy of ships. Now, my dad at the time was a radar tech, a midship, and he was up in the tower, and he had been there for weeks and months. And then he was also a gunnery mate, and I believe had also been a firefighter at this time. And what's interesting is, all this stuff plays out. They're shipping all over the place. They're stopping and starting. And on the morning of December 13th, 1944, he was woken up out of his bunk early in the morning, and told he had been reassigned. And so he had to pick up his stuff and move to the back of the ship. Now, the story goes, and again, it's hard to corroborate everything and all that, but this is the way my dad told it, and I believe him for sure. But that a young officer had come aboard not too far back, and had been stationed in the back of the ship, was a gunnery mate and then also a fireman, and was getting spray, ocean spray, and didn't care for it. Went to the the CO or somebody and asked to be moved to a better position. So him and my dad flipped spots that morning. So my dad moved to the back of the ship. Now, listen, that morning, guys, if this isn't Providence, it's just crazy. So he moved that morning, and about 30 minutes to an hour after that, sirens went off on some of the other ships, and they saw, I think it was about 6 planes coming off of the island towards them. All of the ships in the area engaged with the kamikaze planes, and a few of them were downed. And as a matter of fact, most historians and most people's accounts were that at least 3 of those planes were downed by the Harridan, which I think is really cool. But again, all the fire going on, how in the world do you even know who took it down? But it was accredited to the Harridan, and then eventually 2 more were taken down, so there was 1 left. I believe my numbers are correct. If they're a little off, forgive me. Again, it's been years since my dad originally told me this. And there was one kamikaze plane that was just literally flying straight towards the Harridan. My dad tells the story that the plane went up and then came down straight into the center of the ship. It was smoking. It had been hit. Came down right into the center of the ship, right at that con tower. Now, by that point, there's no more planes coming. Things are starting to calm down for most of the ships, but for the Harridan, it was fully engulfed in fire. So again, my dad put on his other hat, if you will, and became a fireman. Now, the first job is not to fight the fire. The first job is to get the men out. And so he immediately went about dragging out anyone who wasn't already dead, and so did all the rest of them. He drugged them out. And then they began fighting the fires, and they sort of staged the men off to the sides where it wasn't on fire. The part that I love about this story, obviously, was that my dad wasn't in the center of the ship where he had been for weeks and months, where the plane went. But the part that makes this crazy is we learned, like I said, David Sears came and interviewed my dad, and then a while later he called my dad and he said, "You're not going to believe this." And my dad said, "Oh, I believe just about anything. I'm 83 and I've seen it all." And again, he had been in Korea and World War II and everything else. So, had been a civil service. He was a civil service electrician and then the superintendent of the North Island Naval Air Rework facility in San Diego. So like he said, he had seen it all. The guy says to him, when you told me your story that you drug people out of the fire, I started talking to some other dudes and I came across, and I'm not going to use the guy's name, this guy. And he told him that he remembered my dad. He was the one that switched with my dad that morning, and he remembered my dad being the one that drug him out of the fire. How crazy is that? So the guy lived, which is amazing. I don't know if he's still alive now. Obviously, my dad isn't. This was 12 years ago or so. And so I think that's super amazing that not only did my dad switch with this guy, but my dad ended up being the one to pull the guy out of the fire. So just one of those stories. But guys, here's the thing. Here's the reason I'm doing this video. I'm not doing this video to just tell a story about my dad. A lot of guys bled and died, and even if they didn't die, they were scarred and just thinking about their friends and all that happened around them for the rest of their lives. I mean, again, like I said, when I was young, my dad couldn't tell these stories because of all the friends he had lost, because of all the things he had seen. Thankfully, towards the last 10 to 15 years of his life, he wrote a lot of it down. He documented a lot of it with me. We have a lot of his stories. I have a whole little mini book that he wrote, and I will treasure that forever. And there are so many stories he tells. Some of them I would never repeat. Some of them, like this one that I just told, I would repeat. But my hat goes off. Again, I don't have one on, but my hat is off to all who have or are serving, all who died in the line of duty, all whose families died in the line of duty. Guys, it is amazing that our country, as young as we are, has such a history of not just standing by, not just taking tyranny and human rights violations or whatever it is. I mean, we've reacted to it, we've dealt with it, and I'm proud of those men and women who have fought and served and died and lived through it and whatever. So again, big patriot here. Just wanted to take time today to thank all of you. And I think of Shredder and the choir boys who talk a lot about let's reach out to our veterans. Let's engage our veterans, guys. There's still way too many of them committing suicide. And let's be there for them, and let's honor them with everything that we do. And again, I hope you enjoyed the story about my dad. I hope you enjoyed the channel. I'm not going to go into all the subscribe and comment, blah, blah, blah. If you have a story, I'd love to hear it down in the comments. I just wanted to honor my dad. I wanted to honor each and every one of these, the guys at Toor, each and every person who served. JB at Big Red EDC, JB, underwater served for us. in a submarine. And JB, I'm thankful for your friendship and all of you guys and girls who have served. Just very thankful. So I just wanted to take some time and do that. I know it's not a knife review. I know it's not any of those things, but I thought it was important today to do this. So I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching the KnivesFAST channel.